Okay, fantastic. Now we will have this recording for later on. Hello and welcome to the Belize 101 presentation. Rachel Jensen here. We are going to give folks a minute to log on to go to or Zoom, whatever program we're using. But what we're going to do, and if you've been on webinars with me before, you may know this. Please fill into the Q&A section where it is you are calling in from. This is a great way for us to gauge who it is that we're talking to, where it is that you're located. And sometimes, every now and again, you do end up having somebody right down the street from you. So do practice with that Q&A section. And then what we're also going to do is use that same Q&A section for questions. So we are going to get to the questions at the end. And what we're going to do then is go to that Q&A panel and get those answered live for you. So we have April calling in from Northwest Atlanta. We have Betsy from Walnut Creek. Jesse, hello Jesse from Raleigh, North Carolina. We have Wayne in Washington, D.C. We have Philip in Raleigh, North Carolina. Greg is in Charlotte, North Carolina. We have Dave in Fairless Hills, Pennsylvania. Joanne and John are in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. Brandon at Santa Barbara Travel Bureau. Patty at Kunkel, Frenso, California, JD in Maryland. Thank you, JD, by the way, for the matcha tea. Much appreciated. Brandon in Santa Barbara, California. Amanda, hello, Amanda, the traveling realtor from Raleigh, North Carolina. Tim is in New York City. Dexter is from New Jersey originally, but zooming in from Delaware. We have Robin calling in from Fort Worth. We have a great group of folks. I see more folks are still typing in here. But again, thank you everybody for joining us. Today is one of my favorite presentations to talk about. We're going to talk about Belize generally as a country. And then from there, we're going to segue into some misconceptions, debunking some myths about ownership of real estate in Belize, and then get through your questions. So let's get started. My name is Rachel Jensen. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for ECI Development. I grew up in New York, Westchester, so not quite New York City, but Westchester, New York. And about 8 years ago, a little over 8 years ago, made my way down to Latin America. I initially moved to Nicaragua and then was going back and forth between Nicaragua and Belize for work all the time, and ultimately decided to call Belize home. One of the big reasons, or a few of the big reasons why I really decided to go to Belize instead of staying in Nicaragua was because I felt very comfortable there. As you may know, English is the official language, so it makes it very easy to get around, to dialogue with folks. And there's also a real sense of community there. I'm specifically based on Ambergris Caye in Belize. It's one of the largest island off of the coast on the mainland. We have a great group of expats, a great group of visitors and tourists who come down, and then also a really great group of locals. So I am a global real estate investor as well. I'm invested throughout the Central American region. And then a couple of years ago, I do think it's kind of backwards. I invested in Central America first and then went back to the States to invest in real estate purchases there. And I do have to admit, I realize that the process is very, very different between buying real estate in North America compared to buying real estate in Latin America, Belize more specifically. So we are going to talk about some of those differences that we've come across. And of course, as you have any questions, feel free to shoot those my way and we'll get those answered for you. So as I mentioned, I am an expat. I do live full-time in Belize. That's where my house is. That's where my stuff is. And if you are considering living abroad or moving to a new country, it is really important that you do find a place that you are comfortable in, that feels like home. And it's not always easy to do that. It is going to take a little bit of time, but ultimately what I found is really it's about the people, it's about the community. And if you are thinking about that move from a lifestyle perspective, go where it is that you feel comfortable. And Ambergris Caye is that place for me. It may not be that place for you, but we've had great adventures in Belize at this point, from taking boats on snorkeling trips and going to the sandbars, to having our friends come down, our affiliate partners come down and meet us in person. The picture down here at the bottom part of the screen is from a pontoon ride on the mainland. We have a grill there. That's the fellow who runs the company. He's grilling for us, a really great opportunity. And then the picture on the top right is flying into Ambergris Caye. That's when I was flying home from the mainland, took off from the mainland airport, the Belize City International, and made my way back to Ambergris Caye. So what you'll find is there are a lot of different places within Belize. It's a small country, but it is quite easy to get around, to experience the country as a whole, and hopefully you have that chance to do it with us. So I work with ECI Development. We are a regional real estate developer, been in the region for over 24 years at this point. We are obviously going to be focusing on Belize at this point, but if you're still going through that real estate process where you're not too sure where you want to be, we can of course talk about your options, talk about where it may make sense for you. If you know that Belize is where you want, or you at least have a good hunch that it's where you want to be, then you've at least come to the right place by joining us on this webinar. All right, so we're going to practice again with that Q&A section. All right, the question here is, have you been to Belize? Find that Q&A section, type in A, yes, if you've been to Belize, or B, if you have not been to Belize. A, if yes, you've been to Belize. B, if no, you haven't. I'm going to take a quick look here. It's nice to know who it is. Yes, yes, B, A. All right, it's a good mix. I'm going to say it's probably maybe a little bit more people have been to Belize than haven't, but good to see those. All right. So what our agenda looks like today: why Belize? We're going to talk about Belize misconceptions and go through some of those myths. Also cover some of the hottest spots in Belize and opportunities for profit, Q&A, and then I have a couple of free gifts for you at the end of the webinar. So stay tuned so you know what those are. But a couple of quick facts about the country. Belize is small. It's about the size of Massachusetts, and population-wise, it's only about 370,000 people. So 370,000 people, about the size of Massachusetts. You can see why for a really long time Belize was looked over. Our neighbors are Mexico, so Mexico has had a very strong tourism market for years, but now Belize really over the past 10 to 12 years has started to make a name for itself in the tourism industry. And we are very, very happy to see that, to have visitors coming down, checking out the diving, the snorkeling, the fishing, everything along those lines. Belize was formerly a British colony. 1981, they gained their independence. We use the Belize dollar, and the Belize dollar is pegged to the US dollar. So 2 Belize dollars to 1 US dollar. So when you go into the grocery store, everything there is going to seem like it's more expensive than it is, but just cut that in half, and that's the price you'll get in US dollars. Now, if we talk about prices in this presentation, typically it is going to be in US dollars. Real estate is typically done in US dollars as well. So just a quick heads up if you're seeing any prices. All right, so let's jump into it. Why Belize? We're finding a lot of people are deciding to either relocate to Belize, invest in Belize, or become snowbirds here because of the proximity to North America. Right now, our primary audience, primary demographic of visitors and expats are North Americans from Canada, from the United States. And what we've seen over the years is that because there has been this tremendous increase in the number of people wanting to come down, airlines have responded very favorably. They've added more direct flights. They've added new cities. New airlines that weren't previously flying to Belize are now coming down to the country. So it is getting very, very easy to get here. Southwest just started a couple of years ago. They have direct flights from Fort Lauderdale. Also, they have direct flights from Colorado, and there are a few different other areas, cities that they have direct flights from. I know there are a handful of you from Charlotte area. There are direct flights seasonally as well. So just stay tuned and you might be able to find those. But we are seeing that right now there are 19 cities and 7 countries that are flying direct. This is a picture from Tropic Air. Tropic Air is one of the regional air carriers based in Belize. They go to a couple of the surrounding countries, Honduras and Guatemala. And I don't think they go to Mexico yet, but we do have direct flights from Mexico. So it is getting easier every year to get to Belize. This year, there were rumors that they were going to start a direct flight from Britain. That would be the first European direct flight. I don't think that's going to happen with everything that's going on, but hopefully in the future that does end up coming about. And so what we see is where the planes go, the people go. And where the people go, that's where the planes ultimately go as well. So WestJet and Air Canada, direct from Canada. We just mentioned Southwest from Colorado and Fort Lauderdale. And then Tropic Air, this is the regional air carrier based in Belize. They've also increased the number of flights that they have going specifically to Ambergris Caye, which is that the #1 tourist destination in the entire country. In addition to that, if we have anyone from Minneapolis or St. Paul on, we do have direct flights with Sun Country, specifically during the wintertime. Aero Mexico, we talked about with Mexico City, and then Copa and Tropic Air recently announced an alliance as well. So you just have to book 1 ticket to get to Belize, to San Pedro specifically. So there are 2 regional air carriers. We talked about Maya Air or Tropic Air. There's also Maya Air as well. So let's say you get into the country. There's 1 international airport, Belize City. Once you get into Belize City, you have the option of going anywhere you want in the country. If you're deciding to stay on the mainland, maybe you want to check out the jungles in San Ignacio or go check out the beaches in Placencia, you can either take a puddle jumper, one of the air carriers, or you can drive. There are 4 primary highways in Belize. They are all fully paved. Once you start getting to the offshoots, the side roads, they start to become a little bumpy, but the primary roads are safe. You're able to rent a car and it's easy enough to navigate through. Now, if you're trying to get out to the islands, to Key Cocker or Ambergris Key, you can always take a water taxi or a ferry from Belize City. It takes about an hour and a half to get to Ambergris Key, but there are options. And once you get to the islands, golf cart is the primary mode of transportation. In addition, you have bike and you can walk as well. So here's a pop quiz for you. What we're gonna do is same as what we did before with the Q&A section, is you're gonna type in what you think your answer is. First question, we have 3 throughout the presentation. We're gonna review the answers at the end. How many districts are there in Belize? A, 5, B, 6, C, 7, or D, 10? And don't Google it. It's okay if you're wrong. Don't Google it. Just give us your best guess. We're going to review the answers at the end. Give you 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, awesome. We're going to go through the answers at the end. But with each pop quiz question that we have, I'm going to give you a tip that I've experienced over my 8 years of being in the region. Number 1 is when you go to the beach, and this is true for any beach that you go to, sometimes you have those no-see-ums, those little things that pick at your ankles. What I'm going to recommend, and I learned this from a local actually, is take coconut oil. You're easily able to find fresh coconut oil there in Belize, and just rub it around your ankles. You'll smell good, but it'll also keep the no-see-ums away. So just a fun tip, if you find yourself in Belize, feel free to pick up some coconut oil and rub it on your ankles. Number 2 here is that because Belize is a former British colony, we do find that it is very familiar if we're going in from the business perspective. So, of course, English is the official language, and in addition to that, they use common law. So it is a very, very familiar type of business setting when we come in. So if you're looking at real estate, for example, when you receive the paperwork, you're going to be able to understand the paperwork because it's in English. In addition to that, you do get titles to your properties as a foreigner, another very comforting factor when looking at real estate in Belize. In addition to that, Belize has been building its financial and banking security. Some big financial benefits to you, especially if you're looking at real estate, is that there's no capital gains or estate tax. So we know that Belize is really at this tipping point right now. It hasn't yet plateaued in the real estate market like places like Pacific Costa Rica. It's certainly on its way there, but it hasn't plateaued. So let's say you buy a condo for $125,000 today, and then 5 years from now you sell it for $175,000. You're making a 50,000% profit that in Belize you don't have any capital gains tax on. You're gonna have to talk to your accountant at home to figure out what those taxes look like, but in Belize you don't have those taxes. And that's huge for a lot of people, because if you're investing in a country that's not your own, you tend to be double taxed if you're not careful. In addition to that, this is great for anybody who's looking at real estate rental property. You only have a 1.75% investment income tax in Belize. So rental income tax, we'll call it 1.75% for nightly rentals and only 3% for long-term rentals. Long-term is defined as 3 months or more. And then this is a really big thing. If you're thinking about banking in Belize, banks are required to have a 24% liquidity rate. So for every dollar in the bank, they must have about a quarter of that liquid. So that's a huge advantage. In the States in 2008, we were nowhere near that. But you can see in banks, they've learned from the mistakes of others, and there is that 24% liquidity rate. In addition to that, if you're looking at opening up a bank account in Belize, I'm going to recommend, there's a bank called Key International Bank. They do financing for foreigners, for people who are looking at ownership of real estate overseas. But it's also a really great first step when you're thinking about setting up your 5 flags or planting your flags in different countries. Happy to give you an introduction to them. They have a great banking overseas white paper as well, if you'd like to learn more about generally what it's like to bank overseas. But what I'm going to recommend, if you are thinking about that next first step, you are looking for a reliable bank, do talk to Key International, because they've just done a tremendous job over the past 20-something years at taking good care of their clients. All right, in addition to that, a lot of folks like Belize because of the residency programs. There are good residency programs in Belize. I'm going to cover a few of them. If you have any questions about them specifically, just email us. You'll see the email there at the bottom of the screen, info@ecidevelopment.com, and we'll send you the full residency packet. And then also, if you want to bring your pet along, this is quite common actually, and it's becoming easier and easier to bring your dog or your cat with you to Belize. There's no quarantine period, so that the pet can stay with you, but send us an email on that too, and we'll send you that article. But to jump into the residency program, so there are 3 residencies. The first one is the QRP program, Qualified Retired Persons Program. For this one, you do have to only be 45 years or older. The only other well, there are a couple of requirements. One is that you spend at least 30 days out of the year in country, and you can bring your items in duty-free. So you can bring in one vehicle, I think it's every 5 years, whether it's a boat or a plane, or if you're living on Ambergris Caye, a Polaris or golf cart is a great choice. But you do have to remember that you are there on a retiree visa, so you cannot work. I had a question, I think it was from Maria earlier this morning, who asked about setting up a business if you're under QRP. You cannot do that. You are there as a retiree. You are not permitted to work. Unfortunately, there were a couple of people who took advantage of being the QRP. They brought in items duty-free and then used them for business purposes. So there was one bad apple out there, but if you are thinking about building a business or starting a business in Belize, you can always apply for the permanent residency. And with the permanent residency, you do have to live in country for a full year. You can leave up to 14 days, but you can have to be there for the full year, less those 14 days. And then after you're there for that time period, then you can apply for permanent residency. So there are a couple of options there. We've had couples before who one has done the QRP, the other has done the permanent residency to start the business. So there are a couple of ways to work around it, but do remember if you're there as QRP, you really shouldn't be working. But for the permanent residency, it can lead to citizenship after 5 years. And then, of course, you can work in the country, which is a big benefit as well. For me personally, I haven't done either of these. I'm not quite 45 yet, and I haven't had the chance to actually stay in Belize for that long since I travel quite a bit for work. But I'm in Belize under a work permit, and that is an annual renewal. But you are able to get your work permit and then from there apply for residency down the line. So there are a couple of options, but the third one I want to talk about is actually quite new. This is an investor residency, and if you invest $250,000 or more in the country, you can apply for your investor residency. You can add dependents as well. You do not need to live in the country. There's no time requirements there, and it can lead to citizenship or a passport if you are opting for that. So what we've had a couple of people do is pair it up with one of our Marriott residences and resort condos. Through that ownership, they'd be able to get their permanent residency through this investor package. And from there, then have a plan B in their back pocket. And, you know, maybe you're not necessarily looking to live in Belize right now, but it is nice to know that you do have options down the line. So this is a great one if perhaps you're really coming in more from the investor perspective, not sure you're able to meet the requirements from the other residencies. This is an easy one to jump into. Just email us there. You'll see the email address, info@ecidevelopment.com for the full booklet, and that'll give you more of a comprehensive overview about the residency programs. So number 5, of course, is the growing economy. Cacao is one of the big industries there. Citrus is another big industry. One of the biggest, though, of course, is tourism. A bit of a strange time right now with COVID-19. I'd say that these numbers are going to be a little off for 2020. Like they probably will be for most tourism markets in the world, but we did see over the course of the past 10 years really strong growth in tourism. And this is really as a result of Belize pushing themselves out into the market more, because Belize was overshadowed quite a bit by Mexico, by some of these bigger countries. A lot of people really didn't even know that Belize existed. I don't know about you, but I remember when I first heard I was going on a trip to Belize, I went to Google Maps and was like, all right, where's Belize? Where's Belize? Because we never really learned about it before. So they really put a significant amount of money into marketing the country. And I have to say, divers, fishermen, snorkelers, people who are more adventurous water bugs knew about the country because of the reef. But for a lot of us who like just general R&R vacations or little getaways, we didn't necessarily know about it. So this is a big reason why the tourism in Belize has risen. but we are seeing now that it's just generally through word of mouth. People go down, they continue going down. Amanda, Jessica, I don't know if you're on the line here, but what we've seen is just from the word of mouth of you speaking about Belize this weekend. You have more friends who are interested and want to come down and see the properties and see the place, because it truly is becoming that ideal getaway. Belize, over the past couple of years, has really started to boom into this incredible tourism destination. It has been an incredible tourism destination, but over the past few years, these bigger hotel brands started to recognize the potential there. And so where there was previously no hotel brand at all, we've started to see a few coming specifically to Ambergris Caye. And this is a great way to serve the demographic of people who are coming to Belize. Traditionally, Belize really was an adventure destination. The roads weren't paved. It was very, very primitive in a sense. It really demanded somebody who was adventurous, didn't mind if the power went out, didn't need Wi-Fi. Now, mainly the travelers who are coming to Belize are what we call the mainstream travelers. And those are people who are going to want to make sure there's AC when they're sleeping at night and Wi-Fi to connect back up with their friends and family at home. So it is important to be able to integrate these brands into the marketplace. We've seen that Hilton Curio Collection opened up in 2019. They're located on the lagoon down south. We have our Marriott project, which is a beachfront resort, which will be opening in 2022. We just signed on with the Best Western in March of this year to be able to accommodate more of the budget or economical travelers who are coming, and maybe have the Best Western points that they want to use. An autograph collection. Leonardo DiCaprio announced Blackador Caye, that's his private island. Four Seasons is going to be taking over a Gulf island. So it really has grown. The marketplace there has grown tremendously, and we're really excited to see as it's continuing to blossom as well. So reason number 6 why Belize is such a popular place: Mother Nature's splendor. And it's often referred to as Mother Nature's best kept secret. I think that secret is starting to get out a little bit, but the country, like I said before, it's small. It's about the size of Massachusetts, but the geography is unbelievable. You have the reef, you have the bay, you have the Caribbean waters, you have jungles. Here are just a couple of the top places throughout the country. Corozal, it's located near the border of Mexico. So you're easily able to cross the border, go to get Costco or go to Sam's Club, which we don't have in Belize. San Pedro, Ambergris Caye, that is one of the top destinations for tourism generally, because we have the reef right out there, incredible dive sites, but it's also just a very low-key tropical getaway. Cayo District, this is a wonderful part of Belize. It's more of the jungle region. So if you're more of a hiker or you like rivers and going in pontoon boats and whatnot, Cayo is a great area to explore. Turnif Atoll, if you are a diver, this is a great place to stay while you're diving the Blue Hole. And then of course Placencia, these are larger, I'd say single family homes, but great vacation spot as well towards the southern part of the country. So each spot really has a different feel there. And what I would recommend if you're thinking about real estate from a lifestyle perspective, where you want to live in Belize, check out the different areas. But if you're thinking about Belize from an investment perspective, you want to go where the people are going. And right now, what we've seen, well, not at this current moment, but what we've seen traditionally is that 70% of the tourism revenue generated from Belize has come from San Pedro. So if you're an investor, you want to be where the market is, and that's San Pedro, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Now, if you find yourself in Belize, what I would recommend if you're coming down for the first time or you're just looking to come down for a vacation, try to plan on 7 days, 3 days on the mainland, 4 days on Ambergris Caye. What you'll find is there's a tremendous amount to do. Cave tubing, I think, is one of my favorite activities. You ride down an inner tube through the rivers and the caves, and there are all these amazing formations. The Belize Zoo, which is actually a great place, because what they do is they take in natural animals from the area, rehabilitate them, bring them back to life, and it gives you the opportunity to see these really exotic animals. Jaguar Reserve, fishing, Blue Hole if you're a diver or snorkeler. This is what you see in Belize marketing is the Blue Hole, and you're able to fly above it, or you can snorkel or scuba dive out there. And then of course the Mayan ruins. And this is just a fraction of what there is to do in the country, but it really is a remarkable place to come and spend time. Again, if you have about 7 days, I'd spend 3 days on the mainland, 4 days on the island. If you just have 3-4 days, I'd say come out to Ambergris Caye. You can easily take day trips to the mainland. Takes 15 minutes by puddle jumper. You can go do the cave tubing and zip lining, do some packages together, and then come back out and have a little bit of R&R out there on the island. And there it is. You'll have an unbelievable time. It's funny. A lot of us, and you'll see this in the tourism tchotchkes and souvenirs as well. They have play on Belize. So unbelievable. You better Belize it. But it's a lot of fun. So right there, just a couple of examples of what you can do to have a really fun experience. And then number 7 here is affordable Caribbean real estate and low property taxes. So I want to talk about this graph for a moment. If you are looking at Belize real estate from an investment perspective, chances are you're looking for one of two things. You're looking for appreciation, and you're probably actually looking for cash flow. Now, to break this chart down a little bit more, at the bottom part of the curve, we have countries that are going through appreciation opportunities right now. If you have 5, 10, 15 years to wait, you'll buy property low right now in Nicaragua or Caribbean Costa Rica, hold on to it for a while. At some point, it'll get into the rental market, and you will have your land will have appreciated. If you're looking for more of that mature market where there's already tourism, where it's cash flowing, chances are you're going to be spending more on your real estate because there's a market there already, but you'll receive that cash flow. Places like Pacific Costa Rica have already matured. It matured 15 years ago. It has 25 years on Belize at this point. So if you want cash flow right now, but you want to pay top dollar for it, Pacific Costa Rica is where I'd recommend. Now, if you are looking for opportunities where real estate, let's say at our Grand Pacifica property, beachfront real estate, $139,000 for a condo. I mean, that's incredible. You typically don't find that anywhere, especially, think about it comparable to California, for example. But Belize really is at that sweet spot of the curve right now where we haven't plateaued. We haven't hit that Mexico or Tulum market pricing. We haven't hit that Costa Rica pricing, but we've also matured enough where you're getting cash flow. Belize is at the sweet spot right now. I think 5 years, it'll definitely be up the curve. Heck, even a year or two, it's going to be up the curve. But we're seeing right now truly is the opportunity for investment property there. Here's an example of a 1-bedroom condo at the Atlantis. You might have heard of it. It's a Marriott property, but the 1-bedroom condo resale was going for about $600,000 compared to one of our condos at the Marriott, which is being listed for about $400,000. So you can see that there is a huge opportunity there. Obviously, Belize is not yet at the point that Bahamas is in terms of tourism, but if you get in early enough, get in before that big jump, before that big curve, you're really going to do quite well for yourself. Alrighty, let me ask this next question here. What holiday do we celebrate? Well, it's not quite today, but it's November 17th. What holiday do we celebrate today? Belize Independence Day, Garifuna Settlement Day, Belize New Year's, or Dia de los Muertos? We're going to go through those answers at the end, but just give us your best guess by typing there into the Q&A section. Belize Independence Day, Garifuna Settlement Day, Belize New Year's, or Dia de los Muertos, and that's obviously not today, but November 19th. What does that look like? And I'll give you a couple more seconds here. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, perfect. We're going to review the answers at the end. Here's tip number 2. So a lot of people talk about how affordable life is once you go south of the border. For me, Belize is home. And what I have found, though, sometimes when I'm in Belize is that I have these cravings. And you might have heard of LaCroix seltzers. You can get like a 12-pack for $4.99 or $3.99 in the States. And that's a normal price for it. Well, LaCroix first came to Ambergris, or at least I first noticed it a couple of years ago. And I was so excited. I love LaCroix. So I added a couple of the 12 packs to the belts at the grocery store. And when I was getting rung up, I realized how expensive my bill was, because what they were charging for LaCroix seltzers was not $3.99 or $4.99. It was like more equivalent to $20 US for a 12 pack. And so I was like, well, do I really need this right now? Or maybe I'll just put it back and get one can at a time. But what you realize is that if you're living somewhere, or even if you're vacationing, shop locally. You can buy a seltzer or soda water there for 75 cents US. So you don't necessarily need to go to the fancy or to what you know, try the local produce, try the local market. There's a lot of incredible food there in Belize, and you just have to be a little bit smart when it comes to your shopping. So you can live a tourist lifestyle there if you're thinking about living. It'll be expensive because you're paying $7.50 for a bag of Tostitos US, or you can buy the local brand, which is made there. It's fresh for about $3 US. So just learning, go through the supermarkets, get familiar with the local products. You don't necessarily need the peanut butters, the LaCroix. You are able to shop locally. All right. Number 2, we're going to dig into the Belize real estate misconceptions and myths. So this is one of my favorite parts because like I mentioned earlier, I kind of did the reverse. I bought real estate overseas first and then came back to the domestic market and bought real estate in the States. And I realized what a difference there was between buying in the two markets. And so I'm going to talk about a couple of things that surprised me when going through it. But hopefully, you learn from this, and hopefully it helps clear up or shed some light on what the reality is in Belize. So this is one that kind of surprises people. We are working on changing it, but right now real estate agents do not need to be licensed in the country. So literally anybody can come up the street. You could be sitting at Crazy Canucks Beach Bar, and then all of a sudden this guy can be coming in from the left telling you all about this wonderful property that he has or that he's selling for his brother. But this guy may have no knowledge of the real estate market. He may know all about the property, but has no idea what it is he's actually selling to you. I'm on the Belize National Association of Realtors. One of the big pushes that we are pushing towards is having real estates all be licensed. So that probably will be a change that's happening over the next year. But right now, you do really have to be careful who it is that you're working with. Do your due diligence. I think many of you have downloaded our Global Property Resource Kit. If you haven't, just email us back at the email address that we reminded you about the webinar. We'll send you this Global Property Resource Kit. It has the 15 must-ask questions when looking at real estate overseas. The best thing that you can do is your due diligence. Google us, Google the company, learn more about us, do face-to-face chats with us. It's a great way for you to get familiar with us. But do remember that in Belize, real estate agents do not need to be licensed. Number 2 is that escrow really isn't a common consideration. It's not a common factor in Belize. I know in the States, it's something that you put your money in escrow until a title is exchanged. That's just not how it is in Belize. Again, more reason for you to know about the developer or the person that you're purchasing your real estate from. Here's one, and this actually includes one of my favorite pieces of advice that I got when I first came to Belize. It was pack your patience. And the reason for that is because we in North America are so used to titles being delivered and exchanged within 30, 60 days. That's not quite the case in Central America generally. Belize, it can be anywhere from 12 to 18 months. But once both parties sign the agreement, then it is binding. But do note there that if you're expecting your title within 30 days, think again, pack your patience. It is going to be a little bit more time. We do work all throughout the region. I think Panama's probably notorious for being the slowest. Theirs can be anywhere from 24 to 30 months. But again, you have that agreement and that is binding. So just know that if you go into the situation understanding that, it does make it a little bit easier because you're not then expecting the title to be delivered within a month. Okay, here's a big one here, is that financing is not usually 80%. So in North America, as an American citizen or a Canadian, you can typically get great financing. You can put 20% down at most. Sometimes you can put 0% if you have a VA loan or 10% down, but typically you're putting about 20% down. You're getting interest rates anywhere from 3 to 5%. It's not like that in this part of the world. In Belize, traditionally with international banks who are dealing with foreigners, interest rates are anywhere from 10 to 12%. They traditionally have a balloon payment as well. Some banks, I know Key Bank, you are able to refinance that balloon payment, but other banks you're not able to. So just do a little bit more homework. If you are looking at property and you have your $30,000 set away, that's going to be your 20% down. Know that it may not necessarily be realistic unless you're working with a developer who may have special financing rates for you, but typically you're not going to find that 80% financing in the low 3 to 4 interest rate. It's just not the reality. But go into that understanding that, acknowledging that. If you have the opportunity to pay down the principal, do that. Again, there are ways to work around it, but just go into it with that sort of understanding. Here's one that I get quite a bit. I have people who email me and say, all right, I have $50,000. I want a beach bungalow. I heard how cheap Belize is. You may not be able to get a beach bungalow. You may be able to get a bungalow, but it's probably not going to be built to the same quality and standards that you are used to as a North American. We don't even realize in North America how, in a sense, lucky we are, because there are building associations. There are codes that you have to adhere to. There are zoning. There are restrictions. In Latin America and Belize, it's a very, very different world. While we have a building authority, we really don't have zoning. So that's something for you to also consider as well. But we are where we are as ECI, we're on an island. So it's going to cost more to build on an island than it is on the mainland. Also, Belize doesn't produce a tremendous amount of building material. So everything is imported in from the US or Mexico. So when you're buying property in Belize, just understand that if you're looking for property of the same quality that you're used to, if you're looking for buildings that are built to hurricane category 4 or category 5 standards, it's probably going to be a little bit more expensive than you anticipate. But just again, bear this in mind. While the cost of living may be less generally in Belize or Latin America, building may be pretty similar to what you're used to in North America. This is one that I'm not an accountant, I'm not an attorney, but I do have to remind people that if you are from the US, and I apologize, I don't know Canada's laws, but if you are from the US, your rental income from your property in Belize has to be reported to the US. If you are a US citizen, you are obligated to report your income no matter where in the world your money comes from. And I can't believe I even have to say this, but I was on a site tour a couple of years ago at this point with a realtor a real estate agent who was from the States practicing in Belize. And he told the client that we were mutually standing there with that if this client just opened up a bank account, a local bank account in Belize, all of the rental income could go there and he's not going to be taxed for it from the States, or the States wouldn't know he had it. I would never advise you to do that. If you are a US citizen, it is your obligation to report your income worldwide. So don't go asking me about how it is that you can avoid paying that or reporting it. That's just way out of my scope, but I do want to let you know that you do have to report it if you are a US citizen. Next, closing fees. So closing fees in Belize start at 8%. 8% of the purchase price. That's the stamp tax. That's the price that the government of Belize has put on this transfer fee to transfer the title from us to you, or from the buyer, from the seller to the buyer. This is standard. 8% is standard. In addition to that, if you hire an attorney, it could be anywhere from an additional 2 to 5% typically. But you have these upfront fees now, but you have lower ongoing fees in the long run. So we talked about the low income tax in Panama, or Belize rather, for rentals, 1.75% for nightly rentals, 3% for long-term rentals. So very minimal there. Property tax I can tell you for my 1-bedroom condo that I have, I pay about $325 US a year. So you have low ongoing costs. You also don't have that capital gains tax down the line, but you do have to bear in mind that there are going to be closing fees. Some developers or some sellers talk about the closing fees, others don't. So make it just one of your standard questions that you ask is, what are the fees? Are there any other fees? Do I pay the closing? Is closing included in this? Because it is always the buyer that is being charged that 8% title transfer. All right, and number 8, if you are not planning to live in Belize and you want to put your rental in the condo market, or put your condo in the rental market, make sure you're getting a professional management company. There are various management companies throughout Belize. If you're working with a developer, then chances are they have one in-house that they can take care of it for you. But I have just heard so many horror stories of people who are used to doing Airbnb, and probably because they live in the vicinity of their Airbnbs, but I have met people who've come down to Belize, met somebody at the bar. This person at the bar told them that they were going to manage their property for them. They had nothing to worry about. And then the person that's supposed to be managing the property gets a call to go out fishing. They're going to go to this great, right off the coast of Turnif, and they want to go diving and snorkeling, whatever. And then they're going to forget all about the guests that you were supposed to check in. This happens. I've heard about it over and over again. You may end up paying a little bit more than you're used to paying. Typically, nightly rentals, it's about a 70-30 split for rental management, 70% to the owner, 30% to the management company, but it is worth it, especially if you are not planning to live in the country. You do need to have that peace of mind of knowing that your property is well taken care of. So that covers our 8 common misconceptions and the reality in Belize. If anybody would like any more clarification or maybe wants to talk about something that we haven't discussed here, do let me know that. I'm happy to talk about it with you. I know one of the questions that somebody emailed me beforehand, he's not able to join us, is what does it take to be a real estate agent in Belize? At this point, it's nothing, but I can tell you from our conversations we're having at BNAR that it is at some point in the near future going to be required that folks are licensed. You're going to have to go through training. So we'll get better, but at this point, do bear that in. Again, questions, just type into the Q&A section and we'll get to them at the end. All right, so number 3, exploring the hottest spot in Belize. Like we talked about before, Ambergris Caye produces 70% of the tourism revenue. If you are looking for a rental property, you need to make sure you're on Ambergris Caye. But here, this is a small island. It's the largest, but still small, 26 miles long, 1 mile wide at its widest point. But one of the reasons it is so popular is because it parallels the reef. So in just a couple of minutes, you're out there diving, snorkeling, fishing, kayaking, whatever it is that you want. And this has drawn a lot of people to the island. In addition to that, we drive golf carts. It's a cute little community there. But the island is called Ambergris Caye. San Pedro is the town. It's the primary town. That's where you tend to find the nightlife, the activities, the restaurants, the souvenir shops, live music. That's where you're going to find the colorful Caribbean buildings. And so this is typically where most folks want to be, or at least be around, because this is the focal point of the island. And the radius of San Pedro is probably about 3 miles, 3.5 miles. This truly is where everything is centered around. So just going back to you and what you're looking for, you're looking for that rental property, or you're looking for a residential home. If you're not quite sure, well, that's something for you to discover as well. I know there are many, many options out there for you. We're obviously happy to have that sort of conversation with you. But what you want to realize when you're looking at properties is follow the trends. We've seen in Belize, there's been increased airlift. We've seen record high tourism. Obviously, there'll be a little blip in 2020, but we do expect that to continue on when all is said and done. And then we've seen that the big hotel brands are arriving. Both the airlines and the hotel brands put a tremendous amount of resources, time, energy, money into figuring out where their next locations are. So it is wise to follow what these folks are doing as well. And Belize really is the right place at the right time. Here's a photo. Actually, I learned this from the 70s, not the 80s there, but from the 70s. Oh, no, this is the 80s. That's true. This is the 80s. This was the Tropic Air domestic airstrip on San Pedro. And on the left-hand side, that's what Tropic Air was. So you can see it's really grown over time. Today, we see that it is really a big hub for the Tropic Air and My Air flights. Oh, it is correctly labeled the 70s. So this is the picture of San Pedro. And in the green area up here, I think you can see my cursor, but on the top part of the picture where we see that green, that is where the airstrip was eventually made. So you can see that it is a fun little picture. And over time, Ambergris has just grown tremendously. And one of the big reasons that I like Ambergris so much, and that Belize generally, is because it's a very eco-conscious country. They understand the value of the reef. They understand sustainable development. And for any new development that's going in, it must pass a tremendous amount of tests to make sure that it is done correctly and sustainably. For anybody who's on our webinar who is invested in the tiny home project, we are located, it's like right over here in this area over here. If you can follow my cursor, that's West Ambergris Caye. But just figured I'd point that out there while we have you here on the screen. Today, again, oh, let me just go back one more. So you can see it takes about 5 minutes, not even, to get from this area by ferry to the San Pedro downtown area right over here. So feels like you're kind of on your own private island, but at the end of the day, it is still connected to Ambergris Caye. And here's the San Pedro town area. I'm gonna go back one more time so you can see here towards the bottom part, if you can follow my cursor, this is the reef. So this is where you're doing that diving, snorkeling, fishing right off of the coast of the island, which is one of the big reasons why ambergris has been as popular as it is. A very charming, charming country, very colorful. There's the reef again where you see the white waves breaking. This is right from the coast of the island. And like I told you, golf carts are a big thing there. If you decide to live on the island, you can deck out your golf cart if you want to. You can paint it any color you want. Some people really soup them up like the Jeep on the side of it, or a Mustang, a replica. It's quite funny, but you can have a really fun time with it. It's a picture from Central Park. And it's not too uncommon to get little hitchhikers who are asking for rides to school. So every now and again, if you're passing a little kid during the before or after school hours, they may put their thumb up. Feel free to give them a ride. It's, again, a neat little culture and community that we have there in Belize. From the island, some of the best diving in the world. People come to Belize, specifically Ambergris Caye, to dive, but we have other water activities as well, fishing, snorkeling, kayaking. Even if you're not necessarily a water person, there are a lot of land activities. Join us for Lobster Fest, June 2021. It is when we reintroduce lobster into the menus. It's a lot of fun. Some people dress up like lobsters. There's a block party, lobster, everything. A really great time for you to come and experience the community. But a lot of other things going on as well. We have Friday socials at a wine and cheese shop called Wine Divine, a beauty pageant called Costa Maya every August, Crazy Canucks for those Canadians on the line. They host a Sunday fun day quite frequently every Sunday, conveniently. And then if you're coming down to the island for a little bit more time and you like to get involved in the community, feel free to reach out to us. Betsy Rosenland helps coordinate our volunteer outreach programs. She has a lot of examples of things you can do, from walking dogs at the Humane Society to volunteering at the soup bank. A lot of different ways for you to get involved. And also, one point I do want to mention is if you do find yourself coming down to Belize when the borders reopen and you have extra space in your suitcase, bring some school supplies with you, because we do work with a group called Pack for a Purpose. And what that does is it connects us to local schools that are requesting school supplies, where they just don't have the financial or monetary resources to get school supplies for the children. So if you're coming down, let us know. We'll send you a link of what it is they're asking for. And then from there, you can help out the local community. All right, I hope everyone gets this one. This is going to be one of our last questions here. Where in Belize are let me repeat that again. Where in Belize are 2/3 of overnight visitors heading? A, Placencia, B, Corozal, C, Ambergris Caye, or D, Cayo District? I'll give you a couple seconds here. Yes, yes, great. It looks like everybody has listened so far. Thank you. Yes, perfect. And we are going to go through the answers at the end. So thank you all for your participation here. All right, and let's continue on. So tip number 3. When you're coming to Belize, bring small US bills with you, because you can use US dollars at stores and the restaurants, on the beach. Typically, if you're in Belize and you use US dollars, you'll get Belize dollars back, but it's very difficult to convert Belize dollars back to US dollars. So you're not gonna find like a currency stand or anything in the airport. You are just able to use your US. So I would recommend that, but you don't necessarily want to come down with $100 bills, 5, 10s, 20s, singles, that's all good. But just note that you want to be careful about how much you're converting, because it is going to be a bit tricky to get the Belize dollars converted to US dollars. All right, so let's see, how did you do? How many districts are there in Belize? The answer is 6. So the answer there was B. What holiday do we celebrate on November 19th? It's Garifuna Settlement Day. And question number 3, where are 2/3 of the tourists heading? The answer there was C, Ambergris Caye. Again, 70% of the tourism revenue generated in the country of Belize comes from Ambergris Caye. It truly is amazing. Now, I know that we've been talking about real estate a little bit. We had a webinar last week specifically about real estate opportunities at the Best Western. We're going to have more throughout the course of the next couple of months here. But I mentioned to you that we are developers. We've been on the island for about 25 years at this point, and we are very happy to talk to you about different opportunities that are available. We have 4 properties specifically. 3 are here on the screen. We're all on Ambergris Caye. We're very, very bullish about Ambergris. But again, happy to talk to you more specifically about what those opportunities look like. Here's a quick overview: $113,000 for a Belize, a Best Western branded studio. Here are some renderings from it. If you're looking for something a little bit more upscale, beachfront perhaps, then the Marriott residences are a great option for you, starting under $400,000. There we have studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms. But these are a couple of great opportunities for you. And again, working with people that have been there, have weathered the storms before, have seen the market grow, truly is important, especially when you're looking at ownership of real estate. All right. So to say thank you, and then we're going to jump into questions, we have a free Belize handbook for you. This is going to get emailed to you automatically. Usually comes about 2 to 3 hours after the webinar. You'll get a copy of the recording. You'll get a copy of this Belize handbook. But what we also have, and you have to email us for this one, is the real estate ownership comparison chart. So what we did is we took some important notes based on what it is to own what it's like to own real estate in Belize and Canada and the US, and compared that. So we compared what closing cost percentages generally is. We compared how long it takes to close. We compared what closing actually means. We compared what financing terms look like. So a lot of these sort of details that you may not even necessarily know to ask about, we've compiled them for you in a comparison chart. But like I said, this is not going to get emailed to you automatically. Just send us an email. I'll give you a moment if you want there on the screen, info@ecidevelopment.com, and we'll get those details to you. This is one that I know was very helpful to me, especially as I was looking at properties in Panama and properties in the US, just understanding what some of those key differences were. You don't really know until you go through the process. So we want to make it as easy for you as possible. I'll just give you another minute there, info@ecidevelopment.com. And you can just write comparison chart in the subject line. That'll let our team know what to send you, comparison chart, if you'd like a copy of this. So with that, I believe, yeah, we're at Q&A. I'll leave this up just in case anybody wants to send us an email while we're going through questions and answers here. But I don't have, I don't have the time. I don't know what time we're at here. I could very well be at the hour mark or after the hour mark. But what we're going to do is go through questions and answers. So if you had anything pop up, feel free to write that there into the Q&A section. And what we're going to do is get those answered for you. So one question I had from Wayne. Wayne, great to see your name here. He said, can you use a U.S. bank to buy property in Belize? Really good question. The answer to that is generally no. And the reason for that is U.S. banks do not have any sort of legal right or legal jurisdiction over property in Belize. So if you default on your loan that you have with them at this U.S. bank, they're not going to have right to your property in Belize. So what you will want to do is find an international bank that is accepting foreigners. If you're not Belizean, you are considered a foreigner. And Key Bank, like I mentioned before, is a really great option for that, CAYE. And with them, you are able to get financing. And not just for our ECI properties, we do get good rates with them, but typically they'd be the ones to go to. So very good question. Jesse, I don't know the answer to this, but we will get that for you. It said, will any loan through Key Bank show up on a U.S. credit report? I'm guessing no, but I also don't want to give you the wrong answer. So let me check with the folks at Key Bank and we'll get that answer over to you. Christopher E. asked a great question here. And he said here, do the HOA property managers do a good job at renting out the properties in their development? How do you find out prior to purchase? That's a really good question. So I just want to make a couple of distinctions here before we actually answer that. Number one is HOA and property managers are not always the same. So homeowners associations, that's typically one entity, and property management is another entity. Developers usually have more of a turnkey sort of option for you. But to answer your question is, do they do a good job? It depends. What I would recommend is asking for a couple of recommendations of clients that they have, get their contact information, reach out to those clients, get a good idea of how they performed previously. You may be able to get a pro forma from them for other projects, maybe not, but I would recommend try to get some referrals from them of who their clients are to get a good idea. You can always bounce some ideas off of us. If you're looking at property specifically on Ambergris Key, we do our own property management for our projects. We don't do them for outside projects, but I'm happy to give you a couple suggestions based on who I've heard does a good job. This is a really great question, Tim, and I don't want to get into politics here, but he said, given what's going on in the States, how are race relations? Belize is a motley crew of ethnicities. It's made up of either 7 or 9 ethnicities and has been for a very, very long time. This surprises a lot of people. We have Mennonites, we have Garafunas, we have Mayans, we have Latinos, we have the Brits. It's a very diverse country. And I think most people in the country really don't see race, really don't see color. Everybody coexists. We don't necessarily have the same sort of chaos that we're having in the States at this point. So I'm glad that you asked that. I don't want to get into politics or anything, but we do find that that typically is the reality that we're finding in Belize. It's just a motley crew of cultures and they all coexist. They all get along. And that's also why I kind of like being there, because what you tend to find is you have the locals, you have expats, and you have tourists. And in a lot of places, those are 3 very separate groups. You have the locals who are doing their own thing. They're going to their own restaurants. You have the tourists who come and they go to the tourist spots. And then you have the expats who have their own spots too. And yes, you do still have groups in Belize and on Ambergris Caye, but there's a lot more of a synergistic relationship between the 3. You're going to the same restaurants as other people. You're driving the same streets as everybody. Everybody kind of lives within this community, and it really is a unique feel. I can tell you, when I went to Punta Cana, I got off the plane, checked into the hotel, and they said, you do not leave these 4 walls of this resort. And you don't find that in Belize. On Ambergris Caye, they tell you, check out this restaurant, go on a drive down south and check out Marco Gonzalez Mayan ruins. I mean, there's just a lot to do there. So kind of diverted a little bit from the question there, but hopefully you were able to get a good overview. Alrighty, so David asked here, does the Best Western offer financing? Yes, the Best Western opportunity does offer financing. We have 50% available, and we also have 80% available. There are different prices. There's a bit of a price premium for the 80% financing. So what I would recommend is just shoot us an email if you'd like to get those terms, and we'll send those over to you. We were able to reduce the interest rate. Typically, like I said, you'll find 10 to 12% for interest for that project specifically, and for a couple of our others, we were able to get the financing down to anywhere between 2.9% to 6.9%, but there is a balloon payment. I know that we're not used to that in the States, but there is a balloon payment and you can refinance after that balloon payment. Alrighty, so Diane asked here, is it to your advantage to be a Belize citizen to buy property in Belize? Yes, I mean, as a North American or as a foreigner, you probably are going to get charged a little bit more. It's just the reality of the situation. But you're also probably in a different economic standpoint compared to a Belizean. So I think Belizeans, they get lower title transfer rates than folks who are not Belizean. And typically, if you're Belizean, you're able to negotiate a little bit more directly with a Belizean. But it is a little bit different. It is always going to be an advantage to be a citizen in the country where you're buying the property. Alrighty, let's see. Dr. David, do you or your agency manage condos we want to rent at Best Western or Marriott? What is the typical fee percentage? Really great question. So what I'm going to say there is that we have an on-site rental management team, yes, at Best Western. Best Western trains our staff, and it is done through our staff. At Marriott, we have a company called Trust Hospitality, and Trust Hospitality is the entity that is going to be managing the property. Rates vary. Marriott's more of a 50-50 split. Best Western is a 70-30 split. But again, it just kind of depends on what you're looking to get out of the property. If you're looking primarily for a rental, I mean, both are actually really great options. Best Western is the 7th largest hotel chain in the world, 3rd largest in North America. Marriott is the 1st largest hotel chain in the world. So you're going to pay a little bit more for number 1, but you're also probably getting more eyeballs, more heads on bed. So just kind of depends on what you want that initial investment to look like, I guess. Keith, yes, really great question. He said, can you please explain the work permit? So yes, this is a very interesting question. In Belize, it is getting fairly difficult to get a work permit as a foreigner. The big reason for that is because Belizeans, and understandably so, are protecting their jobs. If you come to Belize and you tell us you're a professional bartender, well, guess what? There are Belizeans, there are many people who can take over the job of a bartender. So you're most likely not going to get your work permit. If you can come into the country and offer something different and offer some sort of skill that perhaps is not offered in Belize, or it's very difficult to find in Belize, you're going to find a better opportunity for it. I was recently notified by my attorney that real estate agents are going to be having a very difficult time getting work permits in Belize, just because we have a great pool of Belizeans who can be real estate agents. So typically what I would recommend is, if you're coming into the country and you want a work permit, start up a local 250 company, Belize 250 company. Through that ownership of the 250 company, you can get your work permit. Now, they're going to ask what that company does, how it produces revenue, what your goals are with that. So you really do need to have some sort of business plan in mind, but you are able to go that route to get a work permit. I am going to highly suggest, and highly suggest, that you work with a facilitator or an attorney. And the reason I say this is it is quite bureaucratic, and not just Belize. This is true for most Central American countries. It's very bureaucratic. It could take you a long time to get your work permit or your residencies if you try to do it on your own. I can guarantee you that phrase, pack your patience, is going to ring true more than ever if you're going through that process on your own, because you'll submit everything they ask you to, and then a month later, they're going to give you a call and say, we didn't receive this document from you. And you're going to say, yes, it was in the original thing. They're going to say, send it again. And that's going to happen over and over and over. And then they're going to tell you about a new document that they decided that they needed from you that wasn't on the original list. So it's a challenge, but work with a facilitator, work with an attorney. We're happy to provide recommendations, but of course, do your due diligence on everybody as well, and make sure that you are comfortable with the person that you're working with. All right, Bob, really great question here. Are real estate taxes comparable to US real estate? A lot lower. So, I mean, I guess a lot of it depends on where it is that you live. Currently, I am from New York originally, in the Westchester area, the suburbs of Manhattan, and the taxes here are just unbelievable, 5 digits. So when I got my property tax bill for $325 US for the year, I was very excited about that. But typically, anywhere from $300 to $400 for a 1-bedroom, $400 to $500 US per year for a 2-bedroom, and then maybe $500 to $800 for anything larger than that US a year is about standard. So very, very affordable. And that's kind of what we were referring to before as well. You have the higher upfront taxes. You have that stamp tax of 8%, and then if you want to bring an attorney on, a couple extra points. But you have low ongoing costs down the line. So just bear those in mind as you're going through them. Alrighty, I'm seeing a lot of questions coming here. And I'm going to ask our team to get in touch with you. I know we're right here on the hour now. I'm going to ask our team to get in touch with you to go through these questions individually. Yeah, I just see a lot more coming through, and I want to make sure that we're able to get to everybody and get your questions answered live. So, or at least through email or through a phone call from one of our team members. So just bear with me if it takes us a day for us to get back in touch with you. You can always email us there, info@ecidevelopment.com. That comes directly to me and also to our sales and marketing manager, Ivan Levy. So we'll make sure that those questions get answered for you. But this was recorded. We're going to send out the recording. We're going to send out the Belize Handbook. If you want that real estate comparison chart, do email us at that email address there, and we'll get that over to you. But I'm really excited that you all decided to join us tonight. This is one of my favorite countries in the world. Obviously, if you couldn't tell, I'd be more than excited to show you around for when borders do open back up. We're hoping it's in the next couple of months now. And from there, you can check out Paradise for yourself. Or for those of you who've already been down, you can come back and visit us. So, all right, everybody, have a really great day, great evening, depending where in the world you are, and we'll be in touch. Bye-bye.